deeper than what we were looking at before on some level. You know, that whole like, just like, because these folks were basically forced to consider Judaism as part of their profession, you know, then they're coming over to a place where they don't have to consider that.
Yeah, that was
And that was really powerful, and it's certainly something that happened, you know, with my grandparents. So it's just, it's kind of an interesting personal aspect and historical aspect too, in this whole kind of, you know, commercialization and consumerism that's going on. But at the same time, there's this strong design influence from Jews and from where they, you know, the European places that they came from. So that's interesting.
And I want to make sure we're telling that Jewish story, because it doesn't, I think what I was trying to say when I was talking about like the story, that the objects don't tell the story themselves. And so maybe we can also spend a few minutes tonight talking about how to bring that out and how to make it feel very much a CJM show. And I mean, I'm open to hearing what everybody thinks about that.
Well, utilizing the networks, he used the analogy of this would be the overture.
Yeah.
So it's a very nice concept to think that this is how we are going to just contextualize or give you a framework for this story, and then give you the different elements as we move along, and to take 6 artists or whatever, and then go deep, dive really deep into some of the artists' work.
I agree with Norma. I think this is really the spring board for us to start there and give the 6-7 minutes of general history of where were the Jews and what did it mean the post-war for the Jews, and how do those people tell the story or the success story?
Well, when Laurie chimed in at the end, I thought it was actually quite valuable, the issues that she sort of rattled off to set the scene. So I could see bringing the networks in very early, but I wouldn't like start with them because they're something that's a manifestation of some of the larger issues that, you know. Well, yeah.
I think maybe if I was thinking about the networks in a different way. I think a little bit the way Lori was talking about them as being a way they were components of propaganda. So talking about like what people's homes used to look like, how everybody had matching sets, and you had this big, dark, heavy furniture, and that then the networks use their influence as a way to promote this new idea of design and then support these artists. And so starting, I mean, that's the way I was thinking about it, is that they're kind of like a hierarchy of design. They're using it, they're the ones promoting it, and then they're using the designers to design it, and then they're promoting it to all of us, sort of to the masses. And so, I guess maybe figuring out a way of, well, what was before, and this is what's now, because otherwise it's like, it's hard to, when you look at this stuff, it seems like this is always how it's been. It just looks like the furniture we see, and it's so industrial that it actually is the furniture we see everywhere, and so we can't imagine that things didn't look like that, or everything looked like it was out of an antique shop. I think that that's something that's...
Well, I think the idea of what was before and what was now really ties into the whole Jewish story, and that's how I was envisioning the networks. This is really sort of like immigrant idea of coming to a new place and creating a new place just from the ground up, everything, building new, and that really goes into modernism, which is really the same in the past. And there's a lot of tension in that story between the traditions of Judaism and the kind of modernism. I think that's an interesting story.
Maybe an interesting place to talk about the networks is actually where that slideshow is happening. When you first walk in. So you see these, because there's this propaganda right there, those slides of those house designs and stuff. So there's a feel, and it's quiet also, it's quieter up there. I think one of the problems is once you get into where the deeper explanation of the networks is, you're gonna lose everybody. I think right at that point, you're gonna lose everybody. So it's like you have to give your tour before you get there. because
almost
they're gonna
end
go
my
straight
tour
to
there.
the movie.
I'm gonna end it.
Like,
Yeah.
I think I would
Yeah,
end in the
so-
network section saying, like, if you wanna read more about these networks that we saw at the
Yeah.
beginning of the show, and I would introduce the film
Film
clips,
clip.
and I would leave them in the whole back of the gallery.
Yeah.
Really?
I think.
Yeah.
I
But you
might
have
say
to
a few
get
things,
into
but
Schiff first.
How long is the film reel?
I think it's
20
20-ish, I'm not positive.
That's a long.
Wait, so Sherry has a different idea, let's hear it.
No, I was just saying, I hope, I haven't experienced this, what the noise will be like on a tour, but I would like to take them through. Yeah, and leave them with the films, yeah, but single out certain objects.
But what would you talk about in the network like, how would you tour the network section? I'm saying, like, I don't think I would tour that I think I would tour the whole exhibition
Oh, I'm
up to
sorry,
the networks and leave them there.
misunderstood.
Oh.
I thought you were saying you were gonna focus on the networks and, no.
Oh, yeah. Don't give a tour, anybody, let's just let them watch the film. No, I think the networks, I think that the two back areas,
Too difficult, yeah.
I don't know, if anyone has a different idea, I think it would be great to
We'll
share.
find out, yeah.
And that wallpaper really shows like a real
Oh, yeah,
kink
you
in
gotta
the,
address the wallpaper.
in the, like, next to the Schiff House, which is so minimalist. And then you have the whimsical wallpaper.
But they're both irresistible, but you're right next to each other, yeah.
It was
Um,
jarring.
Seagal mentioned that, well, in addition to him not going in depth into objects, we didn't really address the Judaica section at all with Donald, except for his mention of the Jewish Museum New York workshop, and then the conversation about modern Judaica. So, thinking about pulling out the Jewish story and how might we tour that section, or what do we think about that?
We also brought up the synagogues as well, and I think that's a big part of it that we're not really seeing.
Chloe, did you pull some of those visuals?
Did I print
Pull-
them?
Did you pull, sorry, now
The JF Kennedy, you mean?
she,
Synagogue.
it's on our list. Are there any synagogue images on our list?
Just for the JFK, the gate, the silver gate, or the bronze gates.
So what else should be on our list in terms of, do we want visual aids of some of the modern synagogue design? Victor, it was Reese?
I
And
missed
who
what he
else?
said. He said something that Reese was here in California and did something, but I missed.
He did the Oakland Temple of Beth
Oh, who?
Beth Abraham.
Beth Abraham.
The
Okay.
stained glass.
And also, it was Victor Reese who has the quote that is the title of Donald's catalog essay. So he is known for modernist synagogue designs. He did a bunch.
So why did they choose to not include the temple or synagogue design in the show? He said something about it.
Perfect.
He said, I didn't hear him, but he said something about it. That's an excellent point.
I don't think he gave a reason.
Yeah.
But maybe not domestic. Also, what would you include photos like you would of the,
And also it could be its own show.
I mean, it would be
it's
nice
just
maybe in the
maybe too
Judaica
much.
section, but.
Yeah.
but we can have those as visual aids, absolutely.
I was also thinking of another way of doing the networks would be like, because some of them, like some of those people, they lived in the case studies house, or they designed those architecture magazine covers, and kind of just bringing it into their own personal stories as a way to explain the network.
No, only the Eames. I mean, the Eames lived in their
No, I
house
think,
happened to be.
Saul Bass, he lived in a case study house. There was another, Lustig also lived, they lived in a case study house. There was a few of them that lived in the case studies house and that designed the architecture cover, the magazines for the arts and architecture. So, and I know also like, with the Philip Johnson stuff, a lot of them had a connection to Philip Johnson.
And who was he an architect?
He
Philip
was
Johnson?
and it was a curator.
Curator from MoMA.
For MoMA.
Like,
Designed
I think he started the program there.
And then he uses a lot of glass and steel.
Yeah.
So he was an anti-Semite and
But he supported them, like, he supported all these
He was
Jewish
just-
artists.
His
personal
It
politics.
was aesthetically liberal and politically conservative.
That's a good way to put it.
Just pointed on, in information here or confirmation. Is one of the main reasons why the 6 organizations were formed, like Black Mountain and the Pond, et cetera, is because the Jews were not welcomed or turned away from some of the other art institutions? Was that the reason?
That didn't come out.
They weren't, it wasn't entirely Jews that were teaching there. and
Yeah.
that they were-
Yeah, this
I
was
think that's
very,
the important thing to know also is that the networks that we're talking about, we're highlighting the Jewish designers within those networks.
Yeah.
They were populated by like people from every different background, but we're isolating those. And also to show the overlap between the networks. I think that's the other story is that like,
Yes.
when you see how many of them were in multiple and how they kind of supported each other and we're across the United States, it creates this more national modern design that is infused by this new influx of Jewish life.
Well, and plus they taught at other, like Ivy League institutions like Yale and Harvard, but as someone may have pointed out, they weren't in tenure track positions.
Correct. And that's why they had to move from one place to another.
Yeah, but a lot of people didn't get tenure, I mean, was it
No,
because
they
they
were
were Jewish?
accepted in the Christian society, but they weren't.
But Gropius and Albers weren't Jewish.
They weren't here, so that's,
Yeah.
but,
Um,
Annie Albers went to
Joseph.
Yale.
Joseph Albers, not Jewish. But Norma, so your question was, I think was mostly answered, but I think these networks were formed to promote, or these organizations were committed to promoting modern design
Right.
in the US. And so, and these were the ones that were welcoming and supportive of Jews in those circles. But yeah, they were not, the purpose wasn't,
An issue among them.
pardon me?
Jewishness was not even an issue in those.
That's what the show is positing, yeah.
Well, and I have a question, I guess because I don't know that much about design outside of, this kind of design outside of this exhibition is, what are the, like, are there counterpoints of popular, so like networks that didn't allow Jewish design within them? Are these examples of the like, the positive Jewish networks, whereas there were other, art and architecture magazines or avant-garde groups, organizations that were not
Like
accepting.
Architectural Digest, but
Because
they
it
weren't
would,
in there.
it would make them more significant or like kind of differentiate them from the norm if that's.
Or maybe it
if
was
that's
just
the
that
case.
these were all such a new thing that they didn't even have that.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great question that, like, I'm gonna pass it on to Donald, and maybe we can do a little bit of research tomorrow. I'm looking at Chloe. Maybe Chloe can do a little research tomorrow. Because I think that's a really interesting question, is that we're saying that these were so open, and like, what were they in contrast to? And I don't know the answer to that.
Because anti-Semitism was not over, that's the thing, and then the narrative can't be that America was the promised land where anti-Semitism didn't exist, and that modernity also wasn't anti-Semitic, because it's still Strawson is a great example of that, I think.
These are like the prominent organizations
Are they?
though.
Yeah.
Yeah, like these are, like Black Mountain College is
Well,
the
Black Mountain,
prominent, and then the rest of them are really like out there, the known ones.
And places like New York and Los Angeles,
I
I
mean,
mean, everybody was Jewish, so, it was like, it wasn't.
weren't at Harvard though, during that time, like during the 1950s, I think at Harvard and Yale, they have quotas in place.
Yes.
So that might be an interesting counterpoint to like, there's these professors who are invited to teach at these universities, yet the students, there's quotas, only a certain amount of Jewish students can be allowed at universities themselves.
It's more like only a certain amount, not at least this many.
No, it's only a
Okay.
certain amount.
But
There's that different kind of.
But I think this is a really important point.
Also the teachers.
With the faculty too,
The
right?
faculty,
So only a
exactly.
certain amount could be Jewish, so that might be an interesting counterpoint in academia.
So the thesis of this exhibition is that this post-war moment, was this moment of assimilation and Americanization, and where new doors were open. And it's not a cut and dried thesis, because there was anti-Semitism, there were quotas, there were problems getting jobs. So I think it's like kind of a more nuanced story than that, and I think it's okay to share that don't say like this exhibition thesis is faulty, but I think we can say like this is what this exhibition is sharing, and
focus.
you know, there were
And
other
the
things
GI
happening as
Bill-
well.
The GI Bill was a great leveler. I mean, the non-discrimination, you know, in housing and in, I don't know about hiring so much, because that came later, but, you know, that being able to get a loan, a mortgage, everyone could buy a house, this was the American dream. So they may not have achieved, you know, tenure track status at a few Ivy League institutions, but for the most part, all over America, Jews buy houses, Jews live in neighborhoods, you know, like everybody else. We all had TVs and, you know.
Were there still quotas in place at that time for neighborhoods, like housing laws?
Well, I don't know
Not
if
for
you
Jews,
know that
but
for
for
Jews.
others.
For others, though,
No,
but not for Jews.
Jews, I don't think so.
One of the architects, I'm forgetting who it was, but I was
Eichler.
reading at the beginning, resigned from the,
Eichler,
it was Eichler.
yes. Now,
Okay,
the story with Eichler is interesting because he was willing to sell his houses to anyone, Chinese, Vietnamese, black, whatever. The only thing is that with the blacks, for example, though he was extremely modern, I would say, you know, open, liberal, but they couldn't buy any house. They had to buy the houses on the corner.
Why?
Because then they have only one
No
neighbor, like not in my backyard.
Wow.
But it was a great difference than anyone else.
But other people didn't share his views, so at a certain point he resigned.
Correct.
Because of that.
Yeah. And in Oakland, for example, there is a big group of Eichlers. Just because I live in Eichler, I know all those things.